The legendary Gravel War brought together the best group of mercenaries the Administrator could ask for. They were paid very well by TF Industries and followed almost any command she gave, no matter how dangerous. This team was made up of people with deadly skill sets and abilities. At the forefront was a man who became the face of the Team Fortress group. This brute was smarter than people gave him credit for. He valued loyalty and protection above all else, with an even greater love for his guns. What was his backstory? How important was he to the team? And just how close was he to the medic? Here, we explore the lore and story behind Heavy in Team Fortress. In around 1850, in the rugged badlands of New Mexico, two brothers inherited a substantial parcel of land from their late father. However, they despised each other and refused to share the inheritance. Determined to claim the land for themselves, each brother sought alternative methods. Redmond created Reliable Excavation Demolition, and Plutarch founded Builders League United. They then recruited a team of the world's deadliest mercenaries to seize the land for them, using the bases under the companies they had created. This decision ignited a lengthy war and an even greater story. The brothers soon realized the mercenaries they had hired were perfectly matched, resulting in a stalemate. These mercenaries possessed unique skills and abilities, forming formidable teams. Billy the Kid emerged as the first scout, Abraham Lincoln displayed remarkable prowess as a pyro, and the Heavy closely resembled John Henry, an American folk hero known for his strength and hammering steel with his hammer. The specifics of these early battles faded into obscurity. As the years passed, the mercenaries aged and the stalemate endured, leaving Redmond and Plutarch increasingly frustrated and angry. As 1930 arrived, the original mercenaries had grown old. To keep the war alive, Redmond and Plutarch hired a new wave of mercenaries. It was here that a new Heavy was brought on board. As of now, his real name is unknown. He was simply known as the Heavy Weapons Guy. Referred to by his teammates as Heavy, the brute was instantly recognizable from his massive frame and the heavy armor that shielded him from enemy fire. As the biggest and strongest of his team, Heavy moved the slowest, but he was also one of the most dangerous. With him, he made use of a crowbar, a single-barrel shotgun, a double-barrel shotgun, and an assault cannon. He was a walking arsenal capable of turning the tide of the battle with sheer firepower. Alongside these weapons, he also made use of two different types of grenades, a standard hand grenade and the Merv grenade, a grenade with devastating results. When it exploded, it released clusters of smaller bomblets. The Heavy Weapons Guy was instrumental to the success of his team. As a strong presence, he was regarded as the leader. His armor allowed him to absorb extraordinary amounts of damage before he fell, and this made him perfect to make that final push for a flag or control point. The main disadvantage of the Heavy was that although his weapons caused a lot of damage with each hit, his automated weapons lasted only 20 seconds before his armor was completely depleted. It meant that he had to be careful with who he aimed at. As the Gravel War continued, the Heavy Weapons Guy played his role well, but the stalemate continued. Still, they fought on. Around 10 years later, in September of 1941, during the early stages of the German invasion of the Soviet Union, the patriarch of a Russian family was deemed a counter-revolutionary by Soviet authorities. As a result of this, he was killed by them. Shortly after his father's execution, Misha, along with his mother and younger sisters, Yana, Bronislava, and Zana, endured the grim fate of deportation to a northern Siberian gulag. Gulags were notorious forced labor camps where prisoners faced extreme hardships, including exhaustive labor, inadequate food and medical care, and frequent abuse by guards. However, just 3 months later, in December of 1941, the Gulag burned to the ground. All of the prisoners escaped, and the guards who had tortured and brutalized the prisoners met a similar fate. As the Gulag burned, Misha ran, holding his mother's hand with his left hand while carrying his youngest sister to safety with his right arm. Just behind him, his other 2 sisters ran. While it has not been confirmed what exactly happened at the Gulag, it is very likely Misha and his family led the torture and murder of the guards before their escape. These 3 months shaped how Misha viewed the world. He was extremely protective of his family and saw the world full of evil men that could hurt them. Due to their escape from the Siberian Gulag, the family went into hiding and set up a cabin in the Tudzha Mountains. I am sure I messed up how to say that. I couldn't find a phonetic spelling. Sorry. This was a dangerous, snowy region often frequented by bears. While this would have scared away a normal family, they embraced the challenge as they killed them for food. On the 1st of every month, Misha also traveled to a remote store to purchase supplies. After a harrowing 3 months, Misha and his family had finally found peace in their new home, hidden away from the Soviet Union who had taken their father from them, now under the protection of Misha. In around 1968, the gravel war continued on, but once again, Redmond and Plutarch decided that they needed fresh blood to fight in their war. And with it, new mercenaries were hired. With the opportunity of incredible pay, Misha accepted to join this team as their new heavy. To his teammates, he introduced himself as Mikhail, possibly a way to hide his true identity and to protect his family back in Siberia from the Soviet Union. Having officially become a part of the Team Fortress mercenaries, the Heavy was interviewed by TF Industries in a way for them to meet and understand him. Interestingly enough, Mikhail was the first to appear in a Meet the Team video, which could suggest he was also the first to be hired. It would make sense as the heavy weapons guy from the previous batch of mercenaries was their leader. As Mikhail, he showed off Sasha, his minigun supplied by Manko. Sasha weighed 150 kilograms, something the Heavy could easily carry around with him. She fired $200 custom tool cartridges at 10,000 rounds per minute. This meant that it cost $400,000 for Heavy to fire Sasha for just 12 seconds. 12 seconds of ultimate chaos to the enemy team. Misha's connection to Sasha was amazing. He knew if anyone had touched her without his permission and grew incredibly agitated if they did. Alongside Sasha, the Heavy also carried with him a shotgun. It did not pack as much of a punch as Sasha, but when his ammo quickly depleted, the shotgun served as a great backup. When he eventually ran out of ammo for both of his weapons, Misha reverted to his fists. Mikhail the Heavy was an incredible asset to his team, and as he led the charge on most occasions with the incredible amount of damage he could inflict in such a short amount of time, along with his armor that allowed him to endure the strikes of the enemy team. While he became close with Jeremy the Scout, Tavish the Demoman, and even Jane the Soldier during their early years in this war, it was Dr. Ludwig the Medic that Heavy spent a lot of his time with. Heavy's weapon set and armor allowed him to take and expel an incredible amount of damage before he was shot down by the enemy team. However, his ability to withstand this damage was also helped immensely by the medic. Dr. Ludwig's Medigun produced a wave of healing energy and restored the damage inflicted on his friend. Even though this allowed Heavy to fire his weapon for longer, Ludwig had another idea to enhance the healing. Having experimented with several forms of enhancements, Dr. Ludwig attempted a process called Ubercharge. In essence, he believed that if he let out enough Uber energy into his charge, they would become invulnerable for a short period of time. However, for those he attempted it on, their hearts simply could not survive this blast of energy. With a plan to fix this, Dr. Ludwig asked his friend to help him with an experiment, during which Heavy trusted the medic and allowed him to perform open heart surgery on him while he was awake with a ray of Uber energy flowing out from a medigun. During this experiment, the medic took out Mikhail's heart as the men joked about how Ludwig had lost his medical license. The Heavy looked away for a second as the medic plugged an Uber battery into Mikhail's heart, but it exploded. To fix this, Ludwig grabbed a spare heart, one from a mega baboon, and plugged in the Uber battery with success, and then placed it into Mikhail. After this successful surgery, the Heavy became the first of the mercenaries to become Ubercharged. In his first battle with this incredible upgrade, Mikhail wiped out many of the enemy mercenaries alone, of course with the help of the medic's healing abilities. Mikhail loved his food, and on occasion, he would swap out his secondary weapon, the shotgun, for the Sandvich. Not only did he enjoy the taste, but it also healed him with each bite. This worked perfectly for him if the medic was not able to aid him in battle. When he did not need the Sandvich, he also gave it to his teammates if they were in need of help. On one occasion, Misha attempted to eat his sandwich in peace, but the scout instead thought it would be okay to interrupt this moment and hit him on the head with his bat. This angered the Heavy, and they fought. Misha spoke slowly with slightly broken English as he translated in his head before he spoke out loud, and to some of his teammates, they believed him to be not as smart as them. However, Misha was smart. He just took in everything he saw around him, evaluated the situation, and decided whether or not to act. Misha knew how the people around him perceived him, and he often used this to his advantage. People thought they could outsmart him, but he was yet to meet anyone who could outsmart his bullet. As the never-ending war continued, the administrator asked for a director to come in and interview the team. There was a lot more at work behind the scenes of the Gravel War, and alongside Redmond and Plutarch Mann, Helen, the administrator, pushed for this war to rage on for as long as possible. Helen wanted to know what the mercenaries thought and knew about the war. However, the mercenaries were told that the interviews would be the perfect opportunity to show the good people of the Badlands that they were not just armed psychopaths blowing up all of the landmarks on a daily basis. During Mikhail's interview, the director appeared to know a lot about his childhood. He knew of his father, the Gulag, and their escape. He asked the Heavy to paint him a picture, to which he simply replied with no. The story the director had told him was clearly something Mikhail did not want to confirm. Instead, he moved the topic to his gun. He liked to shoot his gun. That is all the director needed to know. 1 week after the interview, the mercenaries each received warnings in the mail. The sniper received photographs of his parents, and Heavy was sent a photo of his family home, another of him sleeping, and a final picture of Sasha in her bed. Not only did this threat make Misha think of the safety of his family, but also that someone had threatened Sasha. To this, he proclaimed that he would kill the man that had sent these pictures, and that he also needed to buy Sasha a bigger bed. During their battles, the mercenaries grew ever frustrated that their weapons and tools frequently broke. Manco supplied their weapons, but it was well known that they were notoriously cheaply made and fragile. Even so, the mercenaries became annoyed with interruptions in their battles. Later, Manco did offer them new weapons. For Heavy, he liked his big guns, as big guns meant more kills, and over the years of war, he worked through many miniguns, each one special to him. After Sasha, there was Svetlana, then Oksana, and then Sheila, each one very important to him. Mikhail became used to the frequent stream of new weapons, but at one point, they stopped. Even though the administrator had kept any details about herself or location secret, Heavy had picked up on random pieces of information throughout his time in the war and kept it to himself. However, one day, he wondered why he hadn't been given a new weapon in a while, so he travelled to Bilious Gorge under the impression that the administrator was there. He even prepared for every obstacle that he would encounter. He pulled the door from the fence and used it as a shield. He offered the guard dogs a sandwich and bought their loyalty. This came in useful when he and the dogs bumped into 4 of the administrator's messengers and used one of their hands to activate the control panel for the elevator. Finally, he knew that the final door required access from someone with security clearance, so he sat with sandwiches and waited. Shortly after, Miss Pauling left the room. He greeted her as he threw his backpack to jam the door open. This deliberate and well thought out plan once again showed just how intelligent Mikhail was. He just did not show this side to anyone. As he reached the administrator's control room, he was told that the Pyro had beat him by 3 minutes. Pyro had also ventured into this control room for the same reason. As a result, the administrator began a class war between the Heavy and Pyro. Unfortunately, Team Pyro won with 56%, with Heavy losing at 44%. Despite this disappointing result, Heavy still loved the weapons he had, and he knew why he still fought in this war, to feed his family and keep them safe. On one particular Halloween, a child asked Mikhail for some candy, and this seemingly normal request angered him. He asked why should he spend his money on a fat, lazy child that he did not know. Understandably, this upset the child, and having realized he'd upset him, Heavy offered him $7,000. This iteration of the Gravel War had raged on for years. However, after the murder of Plutarch and Redmond Mann at the hands of their secret brother, Gray, the war came to a sudden end. And with it, Heavy's role was also cut. Now, this would have been devastating for Heavy, as his role as the protector of both of his families, those being his mother and sisters, and his mercenary family. However, to his luck, after the murder of his brothers, Gray moved his sights to acquire the ownership of Manco, and unwilling to give up his status as CEO, Saxton Hale rehired the fired mercenaries to fight for him. The best part about it, the robots that Gray had built to take over Manco's locations dropped money when they were destroyed. With a new war, Heavy once again was used to destroy as many of the robots as possible as Medic kept him alive. He was an essential part of the team. However, once again, Gray kept creating robots and the mercenaries kept destroying them, and another stalemate formed. Due to the recent changes, Miss Pauling had taken a stronger role in the communication with the mercenaries, and Heavy appeared to care about her greatly. On one occasion, Soldier discovered a way to infiltrate Greyman's secret base. When Miss Pauling decided to follow him along to one of the secret meetings, Mikhail demanded that if Miss Pauling was going there, so was he. In this situation, Mikhail likely saw Gray in a similar light to the evil men that had taken his father away, and he saw Miss Pauling in a similar way to his little sisters who he had sworn to protect. Much smarter than his brothers, Gray looked for another way to end this stalemate. To stop the fighting, he instead outsmarted Saxton Hale out of the title of CEO of Manco, and as a result, Gray took over control of the company by proxy through his daughter, Olive, and then he fired all of the mercenaries. Once again without a job, this time Misha decided to return home to the Tucha Mountains in Siberia. Meanwhile, back at Grey Man's base of operations, now in control of Manco, he attempted to track down the administrator who had gone missing just after he had taken the company. Grey required a substance called Australium to power his immortality device, a machine that kept him alive for over 100 years. However, the administrator had stockpiled the substance and then hidden it. 6 months later, Grey Man hired the classic mercenaries to track her down after all of his attempts had failed. To lead them, the heavy weapons guy took command. Over these 6 months, Misha had once again lived with his sisters and mother. Just as he had before he was fired, he also travelled to the store on the 1st of every month to grab supplies. On the 6th month of his return, the store owner gave him a message. The woman relayed that a distressed woman, Miss Pauling, had called for him and it was urgent that she speak to him. Misha wondered how she had found him as he believed that no one knew where he was. When the store owner asked if he wanted to use the phone, he simply responded with no. He had returned to his family and wanted to stay to protect them. If someone knew where they were, maybe they really needed him here, even if it was Miss Pauling. On his way back, Misha encountered Soldier, Scout, and Pyro. They had just fought and killed some bears. Unfortunately for them, they did not know that they were just baby bears, and their mother was angry. Having grown up on these mountains, Misha killed the mother bear too and brought her back home with him, Soldier, and Scout to be used for a meal. Having kept his family and situation secret from the mercenaries, Soldier, Scout, and Spy were introduced to Misha's family. Misha's youngest sister, Zana, had lived in this cabin for most of her life, and the only man she had seen in the past 20 years was her brother. When she saw these men for the first time, she decided that she would have sex with one of them. At first, Zana attempted to persuade Jeremy the Scout. However, he talked too much for her liking, and he was completely in love with Miss Pauling. So when she approached Soldier, he took her up on her offer. Yana and Bronislava later returned from a hunting trip and had a similar view on men as Zana. As for why the mercenaries had travelled all the way to Siberia, well, Miss Pauling had put the team back together to track down caches of Australium for the administrator. Without a thought, Misha refused to join. He believed that he had let his family down enough and he had to stay there to protect them, that he would never put them in danger again. His sisters told him that he would actually be leaving in the morning. Misha had protected them for their whole lives. They would never be able to repay him for all he had sacrificed. They were also sick of living in this cabin and eating bear meat. The trauma of what Misha had gone through in his childhood had stayed with him. He believed that because his mother and sisters had been hurt before by the men who had taken them from their home and killed their father, these men could still find them. He needed to be there to protect them. Although they appreciated this sentiment, Yana, Bronislava, and Zana told him that men had come many times when he was fighting in America, and that they had dealt with them. They had butchered them like hogs, and their screams had died on their lips. They had not told their older brother because they did not want to worry him. Proud of his sisters, Heavy realized that they did not need bossy old Misha around anymore, and he agreed to rejoin the team. In doing so, he was promised their mission would be dangerous, it would pay well, and there would be evil men to destroy. With this, Misha left with his friends as his sisters made their own paths for the first time. Zana, however, infatuated with Soldier, decided to go with him. Under the leadership of the heavy weapons guy of the classic mercenaries, the team decided to track down the administrator's mercenaries in the hopes that they could lead them to her. Back on the team, Miss Pauling sent Misha and Jeremy the Scout to check in on one of the caches of Australium. Together, they traveled to Ayers Rock in Australia. On their journey there, Jeremy inquired about the death of Heavy's father, to which the scout stated that his father simply disappeared. Heavy, having paid attention to everything around him over the years, responded with, "Yes, your father disappears often." A nod to the fact that he knew Jeremy's father was, in fact, spy. Upon their arrival, Misha's suspicions about the Australian cash was correct. It had been stolen. He wanted to find out who had done this. To help them, the duo also bumped into Saxon Hale and Maggie, who also sought after the Australian. After they tracked down a group of the mercenaries to the sunken land of New Zealand, the classic Heavy murdered Mundy the Sniper and took Spy, Pyro, Soldier, Zana, Miss Pauling and Demoman back to Greyman's base for interrogation. Having successfully captured many of the Administrator's mercenaries, the heavy weapons guy met with his employer, Grey Mann. He never did understand the world domination types of guys. He saw the task as too much work, and by the looks of Grey, he would not have much time left to enjoy it at 100 years old. Grey corrected him with the fact that he was closer to 150 years old. The classic Heavy loved money, but the chance to live for much longer was far more appealing. With this rare opportunity, he turned on his employer, took him down to his pyro who had begun torturing Soldier, and ripped the immortality device from Grey's back. The chance of immortality was worth much more to the Heavy than any money Grey could offer. During this time on this team, he had grown ever frustrated with the medic. For some reason, the classic medic did not want to join them on their mission, so Dr. Ludwig was hired instead. Ludwig frequently got on his nerves and ignored his instructions. He had performed unauthorized surgeries on his men, and in this moment, had brought Mundy the Sniper back to life. If the Heavy had wanted him alive, he would not have shot him. Angry at the mad doctor, he killed Archimedes, the doctor's dove. This action would not go unpunished. Alongside this, the classic Heavy was also informed that 3 of his men had been killed by Dr. Ludwig's old teammates. This angered him immensely. The death of his teammates pushed the heavy weapons guy to release blood-sucking robots onto the island to eliminate the mercenaries. Believing this would solve his problem, the Heavy turned to his engineer, Fred. Fred was concerned that the assault and death of their employer, Grey, had removed their ability to get paid for the work they had done. Yet, the heavy weapons guy instead told him to look at the situation from a different perspective. Fred was worried about money, but he was holding a device that would allow him to live forever, a device ripped from Grey. As an engineer, surely Fred could make more of them. This tech was pretty advanced, even for Fred. He explained that he knew how to upgrade turrets, not life machines. Instead, he offered to reactivate the sentry busters and robots of the island to take out the mercenaries that appeared to survive everything that the heavy weapons guy had thrown at them. Eventually, Misha and Jeremy arrived on the island to help out their friends. Unfortunately, the classic spy had pretended to be Misha to acquire the coordinates of the location of the administrator. Misha was surprised to find that Zana had also come to the island. While at first he was curious about what had happened to her hand, he was more concerned by the necklace of human ears around her neck. This meant only one thing: Soldier had proposed, they would be a family, and Zana wanted his baby. Although extremely unhappy with this news, Misha did not have time to digest it, as the robot reactivated by the heavy weapons guy and Fred the engineer surrounded them, enclosed by the robot doppelgangers of themselves, and without weapons. Heavy, Demo, Zana, Soldier, Scout and Miss Pauling prepared to fight, unarmed. Just in time and in style, Saxton and Mags dropped out of a plane above along with the weapons the team needed. This was a great moment for Misha. As a crate dropped just at the side of him, he saw the familiar frame of Sasha. He had missed her voice. Meanwhile, the Classic Heavy's plan once again failed at the hands of the latest generation of mercenaries. Undeterred, he pushed ahead with his goal to become immortal using the device he had ripped from Grey Man. Outside of the robot conflict, he demanded that Dr. Ludwig return to his lab with him to perform a procedure to attach the device. The Heavy did not trust the medic at all. He believed that if the medic had the opportunity to put him under, he would kill him or worse. To mitigate this risk, he planned to have the medic instruct one of his trusted allies on how to attach the device so the procedure could be performed by someone reliable. Despite Ludwig's success in bringing Archimedes back to life, he harbored bitterness towards the Classic Heavy. Seizing a rare opportunity, Ludwig slashed the brute's face with his bone saw and then plunged it into his lower abdomen. Following this brutal conflict, the Heavy initially collapsed from the attack, but being the strongest amongst the group, he forced himself back up as he pulled the saw out of his body. In a fit of rage, the Heavy launched himself onto the medic and dealt out blow after punishing blow. He threatened to cut off his arms and sew them to his, well, Ludwig would never know what this threat was. During this battle, Misha had fought against and defeated the robots, and then he had heard the commotion. Misha cared for Medic, and as he held Sasha at the Classic Heavy's head, he ordered, "Do not hit Doctor." The Classic Heavy had looked forward to meeting the current Heavy. He had heard a lot about the big guy. Regardless, Misha did not care. The assault on Ludwig was instantly a death sentence. In Misha's mind, the Classic Heavy was going to die, but he did offer him a good death as he activated Sasha. To create a fair fight, the Classic Heavy decided to shoot Medic so that it was just him and Misha. Instantly, Misha flew into a rage as he yelled, "You killed Doctor." The Classic Heavy may have been incredible back in the day, but Misha was much stronger now. He launched blow after blow at the man, threw him at a wall and headbutted him. The Classic Heavy attempted to persuade him with the opportunity of immortality with the device, but Misha did not care. He simply continued to beat him. He just wanted to watch him die. Despite having called for a fair fight, the Classic Heavy managed to grab the immortality device and jammed it into his open wound. This gave him power and strength to match Misha. In this fight between Heavy and Heavy, the Classic managed to overpower Misha. He had the opportunity to take him out, but then he heard Medic's voice. As he looked, he saw as Medic explained that he had a detonator. It appeared that Medic had implanted several baboon uteruses in the Heavy, and as a part of their team over these last few months, he had placed hormones in the food they had eaten. As soon as the detonator was activated, they would grow and burst out of him. As the Heavy moved closer to Medic, fully invested in these claims, Misha managed to get himself back up and pulled the immortality device from the Heavy's wound. Almost instantly, the Heavy grew old, as if his life had drained from him. Having survived the assault of the Classic Heavy, Misha laughed that only his medic could have come up with something like that as a bluff. It was not a bluff. The mercenary had been so close to being the mother of several baby baboons. The death of the Classic Heavy meant that Misha and his team had survived Grey Man, his mercenaries and an army of robots. Misha was essential to the survival of many of these threats, and going forward, surely he would continue to be the Heavy the team needed. Misha, Mikhail, or simply Heavy was one of the most important and tragic members of the Team Fortress mercenaries. A childhood trauma led him to become extremely protective of his family. It formed a deep-seated need to destroy evil men, and he truly valued his relationships with the other mercenaries. After the death of his classic counterpart, he and the rest of the mercenaries, led by Miss Pauling, along with Zana, will have to continue on to help complete the administrator's plan. And in his backpack, there will surely be many sandwiches to help him through. I will be the first to say, the Heavy is not my favourite class to play. I would say he's pretty far down the list actually, but his story is one of the best. But this is just me as an engineer who cannot do anything to stop a medic heavy combo in Ubercharge. I think my favourite part of the community lore is the theory about Medic and Heavy's real relationship. They both clearly prefer each other's company to the rest of the mercenaries, and Heavy even allows Medic to perform open heart surgery. I am with everyone else, and I believe there's more to that. When I started working on this video about 3 weeks ago, I did not realize how long it would take. What I noticed the most, however, was the amount of bots on the servers. I considered stopping putting this video together because I slowly found that I began to get really frustrated with finding a server with humans and with people that would actually vote to kick the bots. By chance, the Save TF2 petition was posted during this period. As of now, it has 259,000 signatures, 259,000 people. I understand that Valve have always pushed ahead with technology, with Steam and with iconic games, but the fact that they have completely forgotten about a game that still clearly has such a huge fanbase behind it is crazy. I wanted to be happy when I saw what they were working on with the leak of Deadlock, but I could not. I want them to fix the game that almost 260,000 people are begging them to fix. I typically try not to go into negatives, as I generally like this channel to be positive to cover the lore of my favourite games, but aside from community servers, finding a game on casual was such a pain. I used to get lucky with finding a good server, but now it feels like more of a chore to play. On a positive note, it is Summer Game Fest, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we're getting. Devolver Digital have been teasing Talos Principle 2 DLC, which is on at 1 AM my time, just after I finish recording this audio. We've had Doom leaks for Doom the Dark Ages, and hopefully some Fable news. It's odd. I find that when I cover a game that I love here, a new iteration or DLC comes out not too long after. What are you guys looking forward to? That was everything I wanted to say. If you enjoyed this story and lore, then go ahead and like the video and subscribe for more content like this. Finally, I would like to thank my gold tier patrons and channel members: Jonas, Lewis, Queen Arby, Fluffy the Dragon, Chicken Guy 791, Ruben Mendoza, Duke, Toadnut, Oren X, Azu, Karatana, AJ, Verona, Comfy, BG Games, Apravis, Arnis, Blaze of Glory, Cole Sherman, Yali Rodriguez, Nabar, 501st Clone Boy, Drakey Phoenix, and Logan Scott. What is your favourite class in Team Fortress 2? What do you think of pocket medics? And what would you like me to cover next? Please let me know in the comments below. This is where our story ends. Check back soon for a new one.